Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Janki, Artistic Director of Live and in Color. We are an artist-serving organization dedicated to developing new stage works that promote and celebrate diversity. Like many others during the pandemic, Live and in Color is facing the challenges of keeping our company running. If you're able, it would mean so much if you made a donation today to support Live and in Color and our artists. Just go to liveandincolor.org to donate. And backed by popular demand, Live and in Color is hosting our second ever 24-hour play festival this weekend. Performers, directors, and writers will have only 24 hours to write and rehearsed a brand new whole play. The pieces will be performed virtually this Sunday, February 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So please join us. Reserve your tickets at liveandincolor.org. Now, grab your cocktail and start leaving your questions for our guest in the comments. Please help me welcome the Grammy and Tony-nominated actor, singer, music director, educator. He's been seen on Broadway stages in Big River, The Wild Party, Rent, Next to Normal. Please welcome the incredible Michael McElroy. Hello, my friend.
How are you? We got matching drinks here.
It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Where are you joining us from?
I am in New York, up in Harlem.
Yeah.
At my usual teaching, working, living, breathing spot in my home.
Right.
I get up and sit at all day, but it's a second home where I work.
Well, it's so good to see you.
Me too.
I am such a fan. I have been so inspired by your career. I've known you for a very long time. Yes. And I always just, so many people in our business look up to you. Yeah. You really have an unbelievable career. And, from your Tony-nominated performance in Jim in Big River to playing Collins in Rent. There you are. And originating the role of Oscar in The Wild Party, some of my favorites. I want to know how you started out as an actor. What you were a young person? How did you end up getting into the biz?
Good question. There's an expression that my friend uses all the time. You have to see it in order to be it. And I remember back in the old days where, downtown, I grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, and downtown Cleveland, that's where all the touring shows would come. And they have they've restored them now, all these beautiful theaters. And when I was 8, I saw the national tour of Porgy and Bess. And I remember being very clearly realizing that those people up there looked like me and were doing something that I loved. And I made that connection that I could do that thing. And I saw all the tours that came through. My mom loved theater. My uncle was a musical director. I grew up in church, surrounded by all my family are musicians. So I just grew up loving music and loving theater. And being encouraged to pursue it. Having that support from a family who loves the arts is essential, I think. And so when it came time to go to school, it was like choosing between, do I go as a musician or do I go for theater? And I got into Carnegie Mellon in the theater program. So that's what I ended up doing and have never regretted it. It's been, but there was a love of the arts, a love of music, a love of performance that just was, I think, part of my DNA when I was born, and was also inspired by the people I was around.
Yeah, totally. And now you've become that for so many people. I'm sure in your career now you've had people come up to you and say, "Oh, I saw you on stage and you're the reason I'm in the business." I'm sure that you've inspired many young people as you were inspired. Is there a moment or production you worked on during your career that you felt like things were shifting for you, or that sort of was a high point? Because I know it's always tough starting out in the biz, especially for us as people of color. There was sort of a real struggle, and continues to be. But was there a point where it felt like there was a shift in that you were able to actually pursue a career in a
the funny thing about being artists is there really is no arrival place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially, in the theater, you know, you do a show and you've arrived and it's this thing and you're in it and then it closes and then you're right back out there doing it again, no matter who you are. Now, there's some people who have reached a certain level but they still have to get that next job, whether they audition or are offered it, they have to get that next job. And for me, I think the biggest moment of transition was moving from the ensemble of Broadway shows, which I loved. Being in Saigon was my first Broadway show, and then going into the Who's Tommy, and but the shift came when I wanted to do more principal work, and it just so happens you never know who you're going to work with. When I did the Who's Tommy, the associate or assistant conductor or assistant musical director was Janine Tesori.
Mm-hmm.
And so we became really good friends through the course of working on Tommy. And she left to go write a show and then came back and said, I wrote this role for you. Will you come do this show at the Eugene O'Neill? And it was Violet. Yeah. And so that began like a 3-year period of major famine because I was always waiting for the show to happen. We did workshop at this theater and workshop at that theater, but it wasn't getting picked up. And so I was always kind of putting things on hold. And then, casting directors at the time, they want you to be what they've always expected you to be. So there were a lot of ensemble auditions coming in and my agents were saying no. So there was a lot of famine at that time. It was lean times. But then Violet actually happened. And people saw me in that show. And then that's how I got an audition for Rent when Jesse Martin left. They had asked me to come in and audition and got that show. And that was really where the transition happened, playing principal roles. And I was playing these Black men who were, kind of went the gamut from, from Oscar in Wild Party to Collins to Jim to, Flick. They all have this certain kind of dignity. And so I've just been lucky to play roles that I really love and have been really great to me. So.
Well, we've been very lucky to get to see you in those roles always. So you founded the Grammy-nominated gospel group Broadway Inspirational Voices, which is such a staple in our business. Look, there's your wonderful people.
Yeah.
For our audiences who don't know about BIV, can you tell us a little bit about it and also what inspired you to create the group?
Broadway Inspirational Voices is a professional choir made up of Broadway performers who center the mission of music as a healing force. So we use music to bring hope, inspire, and transform lives. And whether that's in performance, so we do a lot of concert work. In this past year, we have shifted totally to virtual and made I took a count in between March of last year and December. We made over 21 videos, virtual performances. But we also are a 501c3 and have outreach programs, bringing music programs to underserved populations, marginalized populations, children in need. So we have a ongoing 9 years now at Ronald McDonald House, New York, with Covenant House, New York, and now with Covenant House International. And we're actually starting a new one this summer in the fall. With another population of senior citizens in New York City, bringing music. So that's creating music. So I, partner with Broadway composers to come in and we match them with kids at Ronald McDonald House, and they hang out and then they go and write a song based on their lives, and then we come in and we do a concert of that material, or we partner with trafficked youth or homeless youth at Covenant House, and those who have musical aptitude, we partner with them and create music with them. So it's all different kinds of things, but really the center of it is really the healing power of music. And that was why I started Broadway Inspirational Voices back in 1994 when we were in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. Mm-hmm. And, our community, theater people are amazing people. And when we see need, we go for it and we work, and we fundraised and we, Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, and we supported our fellow dancers and singers and actors and directors and composers who were dying from this disease. But that wasn't doing anything for our spirits, right? Our souls, it left a hole in our souls for all that loss that you just can't wrap your mind around it. And so I started Broadway Inspirational Voices, bringing together about 11 friends to do an evening of music, of gospel music, just because I wanted to do something to kind of fill that space. I never thought it would be more than just doing it that year. And now it's 27 years later, and we're still going strong.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I mean, for our audiences who have never seen one of your concerts, they are really, truly inspirational. I mean, I get why it was born out of that time that we so experienced so much grief, and it was, you know, it was so uplifting and it was so healing to go to those concerts. And I'm so happy that, you know, it has grown into what it is. It's really extraordinary.
Thank you.
Are there any future projects coming up for BIV that we should look out for?
Yeah, I can't talk about any of them yet, though. We have our Broadway Our Way, which is when we do our Broadway music that I've done, like arrangements, gospel arrangements of. And we have been doing that series. I think we're going into season 4. And that's all on YouTube, Broadway Our Way, from the past years that we've done it. But we have a Broadway Our Way concert coming up this summer. Depending on COVID and where all that lands, will determine where we're doing it. But we have a place that we're doing it, that we're partnering with. So that's coming up. We're actually, I can't talk about that either. We're also doing something on the 12th of March. Can't talk about that either. We're in the land of COVID. So it's like, you announce things and create crowds around some of the things that we do. And then we have our holiday concert in December. And in between, we've got about 4 or 5 projects that are in process that I'm really excited about. So.
Well, everyone, make sure to check out the website to keep up to date, because you don't want to miss anything that they do. So in addition to your work as an actor, I know you are an extraordinary teacher. I know so many of your students and your colleagues, and you teach at the new studio on Broadway at NYU Tisch, where you were just awarded the 2021 Martin Luther King Jr. Faculty Award for your incredible work. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's so great. Why do you love teaching so much?
Wow. It's funny. My mom was a school teacher. And I never thought I was going to be a teacher. That didn't cross my mind. But I grew up, like I said, in church. My grandfather was a minister and my stepfather was a minister at the same church that I grew up in. And so a part of my teaching, a part of my growing up was service, giving back, giving of your time, giving of your talent. So that idea of mentorship, that idea of reaching back and bringing someone up, also an understanding that you stand on the shoulders of those who've come before you and that it is your responsibility to pay it forward, were things that were kind of instilled in me. So when this opportunity came and Kent Gash, who's our studio director, said there's this position, I think you'd be right for it. I had to come in, I had to apply for it. I had to do, mock classes. I had to interview over and over again. And then I got to the last interview and I was like, oh my gosh, I may get this job. What am I going to do? And then it became, okay, teach what you know. Figure out how to teach that, but always teach from a place of never giving up on your students and trying to lead by example. So modeling, vulnerability, modeling risk, modeling community and collaboration and trying to do that when there's such a huge divide between how I was trained, how I was socialized growing up, and this generation, and how their expectations around the training space, and having to make those shifts, having to be malleable, and also give them the tools to maintain a standard of excellence that are absolutely essential, while also meeting them where they are and understanding that where they are is not where you were. It's a different generation. So making those shifts, also not being committed to anything in my syllabus or my pedagogy. I'm still learning and growing. I did a big shift through this pandemic and after George Floyd's death to really go back and look at the historical context of musical theater and the contributions of Black people in this country through music. And so I've thrown out all of my syllabi and started all over. And I'm seeing the positives and the challenges around engaging our training through that lens, so that I'm also teaching the history of our country, which our students have been deprived of in their education system.
Yeah.
And so as we work, the students, they keep saying, I feel like my education system failed me. And I always respond with, no, it did exactly what it was designed to do. But we as artists who are supposed to live in a space of empathy and humanity have to do that work. We have to go back and find the things and see the history and understand what happened then so that we can understand what's happening now so we can change it and dismantle it for the future. It's important. It's too important, especially in this moment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of doing the work, you are one of the hardest working people I know. I mean, talk about setting an example. Not only are you teaching, but you were running all your different organizations, and you were still performing during this time too, right?
Yeah.
Which is just, I don't know how you do it all, but it's amazing.
I don't either.
How have you handled the adjustment to remote teaching throughout this past year?
It's been great, actually. My teaching has totally transformed because I had to figure out a way to keep them activated in class. In a regular vocal performance class in the classroom, they're scheduled. They know who's going to work the following week, and then they get up, and I work with 4 or 5 students in a class. Well, you can't do that on Zoom because then the rest of them are just sitting there for the whole class. So I restructured my class so that the first half hour to 45 minutes, everyone is doing an exercise on their assigned material because they can in their separate spaces. Yeah. So they're working every week. And as a result, they are starting to see a difference in their training and in how they're engaging material because they're working more consistently. Now I got to figure out when we come back into the classroom, how do I build on that? But it made me shift everything. While also trying to navigate what the students were going through because the world was insane, and also trying to find space for how I was dealing with what was going on, and so it was the work. It was the work that saved me. It was the work that saved them, and making a conscious effort to not let the world infringe on what we came here to do, which is to create art and to find our most empathetic, fullest selves through these characters that we play. And so having that reminder at the beginning of every class to be intentional about how we choose to spend the next hour and 15 or hour and 30 minutes, so that we can really learn and grow. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
How has teaching influenced your work as a performer?
Well, it's that thing that you have to put up or shut up. You know what I mean? I make myself do stuff a lot. Not a lot, but a few times a year, I say yes to things because, one, I got to keep doing it because when you don't do it, you lose it. And two, to do what I've learned to teach, I now go, okay, now I got to do it. I got to go through the process myself. And so it has been illuminating. It has been terrifying, but it's just interesting, Deb. Do you find that when I was younger, I was too concerned about what other people thought to be absolutely fearless in my work, right? But you could do 8 shows a week. You know what I mean? And you could be out with your friends till all hours and still get up and do your matinee. You could do it when you were younger. Your body just did it, right?
Yeah.
Now, as we are more seasoned at this point in our lives and careers, I don't care what people think in my work. And I'm much more fearless in how I engage it and much more vulnerable because I know I'm not going to die and it doesn't really care what other people think about it. But I don't have that same kind of it's like, I got to warm it up. I got to warm everything up. And, I got to, those high notes aren't as, bring it down. I did 25 years of that. I can bring the keys down now. You know what I mean? So I wish I could marry what I could do then with the fearlessness and the life experience and the understanding that I have now. But that's the way it goes. But I still love what I do, and I want to do it as much as possible because I don't want to ever lose it.
Well, let's hope you don't ever stop, because it's so, I mean, I have to say, you on stage is just
Uh,
magical always.
uh,
I know you're a founding member of Black Theater United,
I am.
an organization set up to protect Black artists and their work.
Mhm.
They're incredible. You had some of your colleagues on earlier, a couple months ago. How does your art and advocacy influence each other? I mean, you've spoken a little bit about it already, but I'd love to hear
You
more.
know, in this moment, I don't think that I can really divide the two. Um, there's this wonderful quote Toni Morrison has about art in the time of conflict, right?
Mhm.
It's easy to engage your art when you're feeling good. It's easy to engage it when life is great, right? It's in those challenging times that that's when you lean into your art. But I think as a Black man in this moment, being an artist and an activist, meaning for me, that's about making sure that I am knowing my history, celebrating my history, and finding a way through my art to educate my students to the history of this country and where art and history and policy and all the things that have happened, where they collide. Um, and that's how I do art now, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean I can't go and sing some song from another show and it just be for the sake of that. But I'm talking about in this moment. I have a responsibility to myself, to my students, to the gifts I've been given to look through, engage my work through the lens of activism, right? As artists, that's what we do. Hi, Gail.
Yeah, Gail says, Michael, incredibly human being, gift to us all. So true, Gail.
Yeah. So it's really about not being able to separate the two at this moment. And it's about creating spaces where we are curious and where we um, have done the work to understand every lived experience in the room, um, and to the same amount of work, empathy, exploration, research that we do for characters that exist on a piece of paper, we should be able to do for the communities in which we're engaging that art. So that's just what I believe. And it's not without its challenges. It's not without its failures. You know, you have a diverse group of students. Who are you leaning towards in terms of this education, right? Where's the middle ground? How do you bring them all on board? They're all coming from different communities with different belief systems and biases and all those things. So really trying to find that space to engage them all is challenging. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail miserably, and I have to give myself grace and ask for forgiveness in those moments and just keep trying. But I think unless we're looking at the training of artists holistically in this moment, and that means we're training human beings to be curious and to be open and um, to use their art to advocate for things. And what are we doing? That's what the moment is demanding of us, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Kimberly Russell. Hi, Kim.
Yeah.
um, so our mission at Live and in Color is to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. What does having an inclusive working environment mean to you?
It means that everyone in the room has done some work, right? It's like we all come from, like I said, all around the country, surrounded by different people. Some communities that look where everybody looks like us, some where they don't, where it's more diverse. All these things, and then we come into a artistic space, and we expect everyone to have the same understandings of what it means to be inclusive. So I think there has to be some clarity in defining that up front so we all can get on the same page. For me, an inclusive space is one where every lived experience is celebrated, where the material that is chosen, the material that is created is diverse in thought and imagination and lived experience, and everyone values it, which means we have to really be willing to dismantle some of the ideas that have been put on us through the systems around us, right? So that we understand that other people's value and their lived experiences are equal to mine. Um, And when we start to think that way and be curious about other people's experiences and do the work and not expect other people to do that work for us, to be hungry for that, then we can start to move towards what is a more inclusive space. Because an inclusive space is where everyone is valued and respected, and the work centers everyone's experiences at one point or another, and everybody values that experience.
Yeah, so beautifully said. I think we have a few questions from our audience. Let's see what we got. Gail again says, Michael, what are a few things still on your bucket list?
I want to, I got one. I want to make a CD.
You have a
CD? No, not a solo CD. Before, all I have is 2 notes left. So if anybody wants to pay for that, you can
for people out there, you want to, I want to get that CD.
I mean, and maybe 2. I want to do one that's more along the lines of musical theater and that jazz musical theater thing, and one that's a gospel CD. So those are 2 things I want to do before all I have is middle C left. And then the other thing is I want to write more shows. I really want to. There are 3 shows that I've been working on and off for. One that I've done in the past year, one that goes back about 10 years, and one that goes back even 20 years, that I want to finish those 3 shows and get them produced. That's something I really want to do.
Well, you know, that's what we do, so we better be talking.
Yeah. You'll get a call. But that's what I want to do. Those are the two things on my bucket list. And just continue to travel.
And again, that's the thing I miss the most, right?
Right. Yeah. And maybe to create I don't know if I can say that. Maybe a master a program that centers diverse, like having the writers in the room, the composers in the room with a diverse group of students that center those different lived experiences and what it means to not only look at the artistic process holistically, but also the holistic process of what it means to come into that space and what you have to come in. And, so it's not just the work, the acting work, but it's the human work, right? That we need to, so we can really look at it from all those different multiple angles of what it means to be an artist. And so those are some of the things I think are on my bucket list.
All very exciting stuff. Let's see, is there one more question? Lauren says, biggest lesson you learned from your students?
Transparency.
Yeah.
Vulnerability. Because they have an idea sometimes of who you are. And sometimes you have to show them your humanity, your humanness. I like a fine, very respectful line between teacher and student, but I also am speaking to them artist to artist. So I guess, learning, I think that's it. You know, that vulnerability, that transparency, being super clear up front, being proactive, not reactive is a big thing for me. Because I found, which I learned from my mother as a school teacher, that you can be tough as long as they know you care.
Yeah.
Right? And so I try to create a really caring environment that's tough, but I want you a little afraid to come in unprepared. Right? So, I think that's it. Those are the things that I've learned. I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Let's take one more question. Let's see what we got. Iman says, do you have any pre-show rituals?
Oh, Lord. Well, when you're doing 8 shows a week, it depends on where that pre-show ritual starts. It usually starts when you wake up in the morning and you do a little vocal thing to see, just a test. Where am I today? So there's some kind of little warm-up thing that happens, when I get up in the morning, just to run through to see, okay, it's going to be that kind of day. Right? And then that would determine what kind of warm-up I would do vocally before I left for the theater. Right?
Yeah.
And depending on that, it had 3 stages. If I was, I'm good, then it would be just the warm-up, the quick one that I would do in the shower, and then, dressed and head to work. And then once I got to the theater, especially when I was doing Rent, my ritual was before every show, I would come backstage from the dressing room a little bit before 5 minutes. And then I would just do all kinds of like physical stretches and just be by myself in the space before everybody came back to places. There was just something about centering myself and getting myself ready to do the work that we were going to do, and just being at one with the space. That was one of my biggest rituals.
Wow. Well, Michael, this has been incredible. We are out of time. I know it goes by so fast, right? I could talk to you all night. Before we go, please consider supporting our organization by going to liveandincolor.org to donate. All money raised goes towards our amazing artists and developing their amazing work. Also, be sure to tune in to be our guest next week when we talk to the Assistant Dean and Theater Management Professor for Yale School of Drama, Kelvin Dinkins Jr. It's going to be an amazing conversation from a perspective in the biz. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. And thank you, Michael, for joining me. It's so great seeing you. I can't wait to be with you again so I can give you a hug. Before we leave, will you lead us in a little toast before we say goodbye?
Okay. Here's to life, love, friendship, good health, good times, and to the evolution of theater.
Hear, hear. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
It's time to change the story. Come on and change the tune. See how the future looks.